The scratch on her left shoulder plate had been there for 40 years. Dara Okonkwo traced it with her finger as she walked through the crowded hiring hall of Meridian Station. Her grandmother had earned that scratch fighting something with too many teeth and not enough mercy. Now it was just another scar on armor that looked like it belonged in a museum. The hiring hall was full of mercenaries. They stood in groups, showing off their equipment like peacocks displaying feathers. Crystalline shields hummed with energy. Plasma gauntlets crackled with barely contained fire. Neuralink combat suits pulsed with soft light, responding to every thought of their wearers. And then there was Dara. Her armor was dull, gray metal covered in dents, welded patches, and faded insignia from an Earth military that no longer existed. The joints creaked when she moved. The helmet visor had a crack running through one corner. Nothing glowed. Nothing hummed. Nothing looked impressive at all that a Valori mercenary named Tessic noticed her first. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that shimmered like water. His armor was beautiful, made of interlocking crystal plates that generated a personal shield strong enough to stop a plasma bolt. "Look at this," Tessic said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. A human wearing antique garbage. His crew laughed. There were 4 of them, all species that Dara recognized from her years in the black. A Corvin with plasma gauntlets. A pair of syndicate runners in neural suits. A massive Brel carrying a gravity lance that could crush a person into paste. Dara said nothing. She found an empty spot against the wall and waited. "Did you dig that out of wreck?" one of the syndicate runners called out. "Or did your great-grandmother leave it to you in her will?" More laughter. Dara still said nothing. Tessic walked closer, his crystal armor catching the light. He looked down at her like she was something unpleasant stuck to his boot. "This job pays well," he said. "Dangerous escort through contested space. You need real equipment for work like this. Not whatever that is." Dara finally spoke. Her voice was calm and flat. "It works." Tessic's crew burst into laughter again. The Valori shook his head in mock pity. "Works," he repeated. "Does it work against molecular disruptors? Beam projectors? Gravity lances?" He gestured his crew and their weapons. "My team has enough firepower to crack a warship. What does your museum piece do? Rusted enemies?" "It works," Dara said again. Before Tessic could respond, the door to the hiring hall opened. A nervous-looking Relathi hurried in, clutching a data pad to his chest. Relathi were small creatures, covered in soft blue fur, with large eyes that always seemed worried about something. This one looked more worried than most. "I am Pell," the Relathi announced. "I'm looking for escort guards for a convoy job. The pay is excellent. The danger is real. I need 3 professionals." Tessic stepped forward immediately, his crystal armor shining. "You need the best. You found the best. My team is fully equipped with the latest technology. We can handle anything." Pell looked at Tessic and his crew. Then his large eyes moved around the room, studying each mercenary carefully. When his gaze landed on Dara, he stopped. "You," Pell said, "the human in the old armor. What is your experience?" 30 years in the black," Dara answered. "Escort work. Salvage. Security. I know how to keep people alive." Tessic laughed. "She knows how to die in outdated equipment. Pick professionals, little merchant. Pick my team." Pell studied Dara for a long moment. Something passed behind his worried eyes. A decision being made. "I will take the human," Pell announced, and the Corvin by the door, and a young human woman in the corner. Tessic's silver face twisted with anger. "You choose that walking antique over us? Over crystal tech armor and plasma weapons?" "I choose experience," Pell said quietly. "I choose survivors." The Relathi turned and walked toward the exit. Dara pushed off from the wall and followed, her old armor creaking with every step. As she passed Tessic, the Valori leaned close. His voice was a hiss. "You will be dead within 3 cycles. I would bet everything I own on it." Dara did not stop. She did not look back. She simply said, "You should not bet things you cannot afford to lose." She followed Pell out of the hiring hall, leaving the laughter behind her in the corridor. Away from the mockery, Dara ran her hand along a panel on her armor's forearm. The metal was warm. Beneath the scratches and dents, Something hummed quietly. Something old. Something patient. Something the laughing mercenaries had never thought to look for. Pell glanced back at her with those large, worried eyes. They think your armor is worthless. Yes, Dara agreed. Is it? Dara thought about her grandmother. She thought about the first contact wars, when humanity was young and scared and fighting things from the dark between stars. She thought about what her grandmother's generation had built when they realized that fancy technology could fail, but simple technology endured. It works, she said for the third time, and she meant in ways that Tessic would never understand until it was far too late. Somewhere in a box that Dara had never opened, there was a photograph of her grandmother wearing this exact armor. The armor had been new then, fresh from the factories of a desperate Earth. In the photograph, Amara Okonkwo was young and fierce, standing among the ruins of something alien and dead. Dara thought about that photograph as she worked on her equipment in the small quarters aboard Pell's convoy ship. The armor lay in pieces around her, each component receiving careful attention. Her hands moved with the ease of long practice. That armor is older than my grandfather. Dara looked up. The young human woman from the hiring hall stood in the doorway. She was maybe 25 years old, with dark hair cut short and bright eyes that had not yet seen enough death to lose their shine. I am Sola, the young woman said. Pell hired me too. I know. I saw you. Sola stepped into the room, looking at the armor pieces with obvious curiosity. She carried a pulse rifle that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Her own armor was sleek and new, covered in lights that showed power levels and shield status. Why do you use such old equipment? Sola asked. Dara picked up the chest plate and began checking the internal wiring. The wires were thick and simple, nothing like the hair-thin filaments used in modern armor. My grandmother built parts of this suit, Dara said. She was a combat engineer during the First Contact Wars. Sola's eyes widened. The First Contact Wars were history now, something children learned about in school. The desperate years when humanity first met hostile alien life and almost did not survive. The First Contact Wars were over 100 years ago, Sola said. Yes, and this armor has been protecting my family ever since. Sola looked doubtful. She glanced at her own shiny rifle, then back at the dull metal in Dara's hands. But modern equipment is better. We have energy shields now, plasma weapons, neural links that let you react faster than thought. Dara smiled. It was not a happy smile. Let me tell you something my grandmother told my mother, and my mother told me. Fancy breaks. Simple survives. What does that mean? Dara held up a component from the armor's arm section. It looked like a simple metal box with thick cables attached. When my grandmother's generation first fought aliens, they learned something important. The aliens had wonderful technology. Energy weapons that could cut through anything. Shields that could stop any bullet. Ships that moved faster than human eyes could track. She set the component down gently, treating it like something precious. But all that wonderful technology had one weakness. It could be disrupted, jammed, disabled. One good electromagnetic pulse, and everything stopped working. Sola frowned. Modern equipment has a shielding against that. Yes, and every year, the shielding gets thinner and the technology gets more complicated. Because people forget. Forget what? Forget what it was like to face something that could turn off all your fancy equipment with one pulse. Forget what it was like to stand in the dark with nothing but simple metal and basic weapons. Dara began reassembling the armor. Each piece fit together with solid mechanical clicks. No glowing connections. No humming power cells. Just metal and wire and the knowledge of people who had built things to last. My grandmother's generation learned that lesson the hard way. So they built armor that could not be jammed, weapons that could not be disabled. And they built. She paused, touching the metal box with the thick cables, other things. The door opened again. This time, it was the Corvin from the hiring hall. He was called Breck, a massive creature with stone-gray skin and 4 arms. 2 of those arms ended in plasma gauntlets that glowed with orange fire. The merchant wants us in the cargo bay, Breck rumbled. He's going to explain what we are protecting. Dara nodded and finished clicking her armor together. It settled onto her body like an old friend. Heavy, solid, patient. They found Pell in the cargo bay, standing nervously among stacked containers. The Relathi wrung his small hands together as he waited for them. The cargo, Pell said, is medicine. Very rare medicine. It is needed desperately on a colony world that is dying from a plague. If we do not deliver it in time, thousands will die. What kind of plague? Sola asked. The kind that only this medicine can cure. Pell's large eyes glistened. The colony has children. Families. They are counting on us. Brett crossed his forearms. The transit corridor is dangerous. Pirates hunt there. Yes, Pell admitted. That is why I needed guards. Good guards. Guards who know how to survive. He looked directly at Dara when he said that last word. The ship shuddered as it entered the transit corridor. Through the cargo bay window, stars stretched into lines as they moved into the most dangerous stretch of space between Meridian Station and the dying colony. Dara checked her sidearm. It was a projectile weapon, the kind that fired simple metal bullets instead of energy beams. Her grandmother had carried one just like it. The ship's sensors began to ping. 3 vessels. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, moving to intercept, and then, cutting through on an open channel, came a familiar voice. Told you she would not last, Tessic said, his laugh echoing through the cargo bay. I told you. 3 pirate ships hung in the darkness like predators waiting to strike. Their hulls were painted black, nearly invisible against the void. Only their engine glow gave them away as they moved to surround the convoy ship. Dara watched through the cargo bay window as escape routes disappeared one by one. The pirates knew exactly where they would be. This was not a random attack. This was a trap. Tessic, Breck growled, his plasma gauntlets powering up with an angry hum. He sold our route. Pell made a small sound of despair. He was rejected. Why would he do this? Credits, Dara said simply. And spite. Probably more spite than credits. Sola raised her pulse rifle, checking its power levels. We can fight. We have weapons. A new voice crackled over the ship's communication system. It was deep and rough, the voice of someone who had said terrible things many times before. Convoy vessel, this is Captain Voss of the Black Current. You are surrounded. Surrender your cargo, and you will be allowed to live. Resist, and you will die slowly. Pell looked at Dara with desperate eyes. What do we do? Before Dara could answer, a strange sound filled the ship. It was like a low hum that vibrated through the walls and into their bones. Warning lights flickered. Screens went dark. Sola pulled the trigger on her rifle. Nothing happened. What? She pulled it again. Still nothing. The weapon's power indicators had gone completely dark. Breck roared with frustration. His plasma gauntlets sputtered and died, the orange glow fading to nothing. He slammed his 4 fists against the wall. Dampening field, Dara said calmly. They are broadcasting an energy disruption wave. All modern weapons are useless now. Tessic's laugh came through on the emergency channel. I told you her ancient junk was worthless. But guess what? So is everything else now. Everyone is helpless. The pirate ships began docking procedures. Magnetic clamps attached to the hull with heavy thuds. The convoy ship shuddered. They are boarding, Pell whispered. Sola kept pulling the trigger of her dead rifle, her face twisted with fear and confusion. This cannot be happening. This cannot stop. Dara's voice was firm. She stepped forward, her old armor creaking with the movement. Put that down. It is useless. But we need weapons. Then use these. Dara reached to her belt and pulled out her projectile sidearm. She checked it once, then handed Sola a ceramic blade from sheath on her thigh. The pistol fires metal bullets. No energy to disrupt. The blade is ceramic and steel. No power cells to drain. Dara pulled a second blade for herself. Simple weapons for a complicated situation. Breck stared at her. Your armor. It is still working. It was true. While every other piece of technology had gone dark, Dara's ancient armor still hummed with quiet power. The joint still moved smoothly. The visor still showed basic readings. My grandmother built this suit to operate in dampening fields, Dara explained. She survived 3 of them during the first contact wars. She made sure her children would never be helpless the way she once was. The airlock hissed. The pirates were cutting through. Breck, find a weapon you can swing. Sola, stay behind me. Pell, hide. The Relathi scrambled behind a stack of cargo containers. Breck grabbed a metal pipe from a maintenance kit. Sola gripped the ceramic blade with shaking hands. The airlock burst open. Pirates poured through, laughing and confident. They expected helpless victims with dead weapons. They expected easy prey. They got Dara. She shot the first pirate through the faceplate before he finished stepping through the door. The crack of the projectile weapon echoed through the cargo bay like thunder. The other pirates froze, surprised by a sound they had never heard in combat before. Dara did not give them time to recover. She moved forward, firing twice more. 2 more pirates fell. She has a working weapon, someone screamed. Kill her. Kill her now. But their energy weapons were just as dead as everyone else's. They had blades and clubs, nothing more. And Dara had been fighting with blades and simple weapons for 30 years. The corridor became a nightmare of close combat. Dara moved through the pirates like a storm, her armor absorbing blows that would have killed an unprotected human. Her blade opened throats. Her pistol cracked again and again. Breck joined the fight with a roar, swinging his pipe with 4 arms worth of strength. Pirates flew backward, bones shattered. Sola stayed close to Dara, too scared to fight at first. Then a pirate lunged at her, and something ancient woke up inside her. She ducked under his swing and drove the ceramic blade into his side. He fell, and she stood over him, breathing hard, transformed in 3 minutes. The boarding party was dead or dying on the cargo bay floor. But through the airlock, they could hear more pirates preparing to board. And in the distance, Captain Voss's voice crackled with rage. Send everyone, kill them all, and take the cargo. And bring me the human in the old armor. I want to see her die. Tessik's voice followed, dripping with false concern. You are still going to die out there, old woman. You might have won one fight, but you cannot beat them all. Dara wiped blood from her blade. She looked at the airlock, then at her armor's forearm panel. There was another option. An option she had hoped never to use. Pell, she said quietly. I need to talk to you about your ship's power systems. Blood dripped from Dara's blade onto the cargo bay floor. Around her, dead pirates lay in twisted heaps. Through the airlock, she could hear more of them gathering, preparing for the next assault. Pell crawled out from behind the cargo containers, his blue fur matted with sweat. His large eyes moved across the bodies, then settled on Dara with something like awe. You saved us, the Relathi whispered. Not yet. Dara touched the panel on her forearm. How much power can your ship's core generate? Pell blinked in confusion. The core? What? How much? Enough to run life support and basic systems for months. Why does that matter? Dara began removing a section of her chest armor. Beneath the dull metal was a compartment that Sola and Breck had never seen before. Inside sat a device that looked almost primitive. Thick cables, heavy switches, a core of dense metal wrapped in copper wire. What is that? Breck asked, his deep voice filled with unease. My grandmother called it the last light. Dara's hands moved carefully around the device. It is an electromagnetic pulse generator, not the weak dampening field the pirates are using. This is something much more powerful. Sola leaned closer, trying to understand. What does it do? If I connect it to your ship's power core, Dara said to Pell, it can release a massive pulse. Everything electronic within a huge radius will stop working. Not just weapons. Everything. Navigation. Life support. Engines. Every ship caught in the pulse will go completely dark. Silence filled the cargo bay. Outside, they could hear pirates shouting, working up courage for another attack. That would disable the pirates, Breck said slowly. But it would also disable us. Yes, we would be helpless, drifting in space with no power. Yes, Pell's small hands trembled. We would die. Without life support, without navigation, we would die. Dara shook her head. Before we left Meridian Station, I sent a message to an old friend, another survivor from the old days. Her ship runs on systems so old that the pulse would not affect them. She is coming. You planned for this? Sola asked, her voice rising. I planned for everything. That is how I have survived 30 years in the black." More pirates were gathering at the airlock. Captain Voss's voice echoed through the ship again, filled with cold fury. "You have killed my crew. You have cost me time and blood. Now you will pay. My entire fleet is coming. 5 ships, 50 fighters. You will be overwhelmed, and I will personally watch you die." Dara looked at Pell. "You hired me to protect your cargo, to save those people on the colony world. This is the only way. But the risk is death either way. At least this way, we have a chance. And the pirates will learn a lesson they should have learned a long time ago." Breck stepped forward, his stone-gray face grim. "What lesson?" Dara met his eyes. "Never laugh at something that has survived longer than you." Pell wrung his hands, his whole body shaking with fear and indecision. The cargo bay echoed with the sounds of pirates cutting through secondary airlocks. They had minutes at most before they were overwhelmed. "The children on that colony," Pell said quietly. "The families waiting for medicine. Yes. They will die if we do not deliver the cargo. Yes." Pell closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something harder. Determination. "Do it," the Ralathi said. "Use your last light." Dara nodded. "Breck, I need you to go to the engineering section. Manually disconnect life support from the main power grid. We need those systems running on backup batteries when the pulse hits." "How do I do that?" "There will be physical switches. Big red ones, probably. The old designs always had manual overrides." Breck hesitated, then nodded and ran toward engineering, his 4 arms pumping. "Sorta." Dara handed her the pistol and remaining ammunition. "Hold the airlock. Buy me time." The young woman's face was pale, but she took the weapon with steady hands. "How much time?" "As much as you can give me." Sola moved to the airlock, crouching behind cover. Her earlier fear had transformed into something fiercer. She had killed a man today. She had discovered that the universe was darker and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And she had survived. Dara pulled cables from her armor and began connecting them to the ship's power junction. The last light hummed as energy began to flow into it. Lights flickered throughout the ship as the device drew more and more power. Pell watched, his large eyes reflecting the growing glow from the ancient device. "Your grandmother built this?" "Yes. Her generation built weapons for a different kind of war. A war where survival mattered more than looking impressive. They knew that someday, someone would laugh at their old equipment, and they wanted to make sure that laughter would stop." The device hummed louder. Panels on Dara's armor slid open, revealing circuitry that pulsed with building energy. The air itself seemed to vibrate. To the airlock, Sola fired 3 shots. Screams echoed from the other side. Through the communication system, Tessik's voice came one last time, nervous now instead of mocking. "What is she doing? What is that sound?" Dara smiled grimly and whispered to herself, "Sorry, Grandma. Looks like I have to use it after all." 5 pirate ships surrounded the convoy vessel like wolves circling wounded prey. Their hulls bristled with weapons. Their engines glowed with barely contained power. Captain Voss had called in every ship under his command for this final assault. Inside the convoy ship, Dara stood at the center of a web of cables that connected her grandmother's armor to the vessel's power core. The last light device hummed with a sound that made teeth ache and hair stand on end. Energy crackled along the cables like lightning seeking ground. Breck returned from engineering, breathing hard. Life support is disconnected, running on backup batteries. Good. At the airlock, Sola crouched with the pistol, 2 bullets remaining. Pirates had stopped trying to board after she killed 4 more of them, but they were gathering for a final rush. Captain Voss's voice boomed through every speaker on the ship. "This is your last chance. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick. Continue to resist, and I will make them last for days." Dara walked to the cargo bay's main viewport. Through the thick glass, she could see the pirate fleet. 5 black ships, dozens of smaller fighters, hundreds of crew members who had made their living by killing and stealing. She opened a channel on all frequencies. Every pirate ship would hear her. Every fighter pilot, even Tessik, wherever he was hiding. "This is Dara, Okonkwo of Earth. Her voice carried through the void, calm and steady. My grandmother survived the first contact wars. She fought things from the dark between stars. She watched friends die and worlds burn. And when it was over, she built armor that would protect her children from ever facing that horror unprepared. The pirate ships held position, confused by this strange broadcast. My mother survived the Syndicate uprising. She wore this same armor in battles that killed thousands. She came home every time because she understood something that fancy warriors forget. Simple survives. Dara touched the final connection on her armor. The last light device reached full power. The cables glowed white-hot. I have survived 30 years in the black. I have been shot, stabbed, poisoned, and left for dead more times than I can count. And I'm still here. Do you want to know why? Captain Voss finally spoke, his voice uncertain. What are you doing? Dara smiled, though no one could see it behind her cracked visor. I'm teaching you a lesson, Captain. The same lesson my grandmother taught aliens over 100 years ago. Never laugh at humans. Never underestimate what we built to survive. And never, ever, assume that old means weak. She activated the last light. The pulse erupted from the convoy ship like a second sun being born. A wave of electromagnetic energy expanded outward at the speed of light, visible as a brilliant blue ring that washed over everything in its path. IT hit the first pirate ship, and the vessel went dark instantly. Engines died. Lights vanished. Weapons powered down. The ship began to drift, lifeless. The pulse continued outward. Second ship, third, fourth, fifth. One by one, the entire pirate fleet went silent. Fighters tumbled through space, their pilots suddenly trapped in metal coffins with no power. The dampening field they had been using vanished. Not that it mattered now. Every electronic system in the area was dead, including the convoy ship. The lights went out. The hum of machinery stopped. In the sudden silence, Dirk could hear Pell's rapid breathing and Sola's quiet prayer. Emergency lighting flickered on, dim red glow from backup batteries. Life support hummed to life on its isolated circuit, just as Dara had planned. Through the viewport, the pirate fleet drifted in total darkness. The only light came from distant stars and the fading glow of the pulse itself. Tessik's voice came through on an emergency broadcast band, powered by what must have been a hand-crank transmitter. He was no longer laughing. Help! Someone help! Our ships are dead. We are drifting. Someone please help us. Dara said nothing. She did not need to. Minutes passed in silence. The convoy ship drifted among its enemies, all of them equally helpless now. Except the pirates had no backup life support. No manual overrides. No emergency batteries. They had relied completely on their fancy technology. And now their fancy technology was dead. A new light appeared in the distance. A ship, moving toward them through the field of drifting vessels. Its engines burned with the steady glow of old chemical rockets. Its hull was scarred and patched, almost as old as Dara's armor. The ship's name was painted on its side in faded letters. The Remembrance. Dara opened a channel on her armor's simple radio system, one of the few things still working. Ife. Good timing. A woman's voice came back, rough and warm. You used the last light. I thought you said you would never use it. Plans change. They always do. There was a smile in Ife's voice. Hold tight. I'm coming to get you. Pell appeared at Dara's side, his blue fur standing on end from the residual energy. Is it over? Dara looked out at the drifting pirate ships. Somewhere out there, Captain Voss was learning what it felt like to be helpless. Somewhere out there, Tessik was discovering that mocking someone's old equipment was a mistake that could cost everything. Yes, Dara said. It is over. The Remembrance was older than most space stations. Its hull told stories in dents and patches, each scar marking a moment when death had come close, but not close enough. The ship moved through the field of drifting pirate vessels with careful grace, like an elder walking among fallen enemies. Dara watched from the convoy ship's viewport as Ife's vessel approached. The old freighter extended docking clamps that locked onto their hull with solid mechanical thuds. No fancy magnetic systems. No energy fields. Just metal gripping metal. The airlock opened with a hiss. Aoife stepped through, a weathered human woman with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. She wore armor almost as old as Dara's, though different in design. Veterans recognized each other by their scars. "You look terrible," Aoife said. "You look old," Dara replied. They embraced briefly, the gesture of warriors who had survived enough battles to appreciate simple human contact. Pell scurried forward, his blue fur still standing in patches from the electromagnetic pulse. "You are the rescue? You came all this way?" Aoife looked down at the small Relathi. Dara called. I answered. That is what survivors do. The Remembrance began towing the convoy ship away from the drifting pirate fleet. Through the viewport, they could see black vessels tumbling slowly through space, completely powerless. Emergency lights flickered in a few portholes where crews were learning what it meant to be helpless. "What will happen to them?" Sola asked. She stood nearby, still holding the empty pistol. The young woman looked different now. Older, harder. "Patrol ships will find them eventually," Dara said. "They will be rescued. Arrested. They will live. After what they tried to do to us. They should die out there." Dara turned to look at the young woman. The pulse was not about killing them. It was about stopping them. "There is a difference." Breck rumbled in agreement. The Corvin had been quiet since the pulse, processing everything he had witnessed. His plasma gauntlets were still dead weights on his arms. Useless metal. "The weapons I carried," Breck said slowly. "The armor I trusted. All useless when that pulse hit. But yours." He gestured at Dara's ancient suit. "Yours kept working. My grandmother understood something important. When everything fancy fails, simple is all you have left. So she made sure her family would always have something simple that worked." They reached safe space 3 hours later. The Remembrance released the convoy ship, and Pell's pilot managed to restart basic systems using manual procedures that nobody had used in decades. The engines coughed to life. Navigation flickered back online. The medicine would reach the colony. Thousands of lives would be saved. Pell found Dara in the cargo bay, checking her armor for damage. The last light device had burned out completely, its core melted from the massive energy discharge. It would never fire again. "I owe you everything," Pell said. "The cargo, my life, the lives of everyone on that colony." Dara removed the burned-out device and set it aside. "You paid for guards. You got guards. I paid for protection. I got a miracle." The Relathi wrung his small hands. "I want to offer you permanent employment. Good pay. Safe routes. You would never have to take dangerous jobs again." "No." Pell blinked. "No. There are other people who need guards. Other cargoes that need protecting. Other merchants who will hire experienced help." Dara sealed her armor's chest plate, hiding the empty compartment where the last light had lived. "But if you ever need me again, send a message. I will answer." The Relathi nodded slowly, accepting her decision with visible disappointment. Later, aboard the Remembrance, Dara and Aoife shared a drink in the old freighter's cramped galley. The liquor was harsh and burned going down, exactly the way veterans liked it. "The last light is gone," Aoife observed. "Yes. My grandmother built 3 of them. My mother used one during the uprising. Now I have used another. The last one is buried on Earth, waiting for someone in my family to need it. Hopefully no one ever will. Hopefully." They drank in comfortable silence. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past like scattered diamonds that a knock came at the galley door. Sola stood there, still wearing her armor, still carrying herself like someone who had discovered a new version of herself. "I want to learn," the young woman said. "The old ways. Simple technology. How to survive when everything fancy fails." Dara studied her for a long moment. She saw the fear that still lingered in Sola's eyes, but also the determination that had grown from surviving something terrible. "It is hard work. Takes years to master. I have years. You will have to give up relying on technology that can fail you. My technology already failed me. Your grandmother's technology saved my life." Dara looked at Aoife. The older woman shrugged, a gesture that said the decision was Dara's alone. "First lesson," Dara said, turning back to Sola. "Fancy breaks. Simple survives. Remember that, and you might live long enough to learn the second lesson. What is the second lesson? Dara almost smiled. I will tell you when you are ready. Somewhere far behind them, Tessic and the other pirates drifted in darkness, waiting for rescue that would bring them to justice. They had laughed at old armor. They had mocked simple technology. They had assumed that new meant better and old meant weak. Now they floated helpless in the void, a lesson carved into the black itself. Dara placed her hand on her armor's chest plate, feeling the hum of systems that had protected her family for 3 generations. The last light was gone, but the armor remained. The knowledge remained. The legacy remained. And somewhere out there, another enemy was probably laughing at a human with old equipment. They would learn. They always did. Fancy breaks. Simple survives. And those who forget that lesson would keep learning it the hard way until the stars themselves burned out.